You need to stop doing this to your reluctant or challenged readers, and I'm going to tell you why. So there's two reasons they're either reluctant or challenged. Either one, they find reading really challenging and it's not coming naturally to them, or two, they might just find certain subjects boring, or if it's not about the very specific thing that they really enjoy, they don't want anything to do with it. So first thing I'm actually going to talk about is if they're finding it boring. So poetry is a super duper easy way to get children more into reading because it is short tidbits of information and short things to read that they can get through and feel successful at. So if you're just like, well, my children don't like poetry, so you don't even know it, but if you go look up any sort of subject and put the word poetry with it, you are going to get a gazillion examples. So I have a few here. So if you have children that are into animals and stuff, this is a great collection of poems. If they love to color or things from around the world, this is a great book. Maybe you have kids that are into construction. Here's another wonderful book. Or maybe they're into like the world and things around them. Another great book. So you can't use poetry as an excuse to not have your children read, because you can find anything on the internet. You can find poetry about reptiles. You can find poetry about traveling the world, about horses, about bugs, about trucks and motor cars, like anything. So if you have a child who's saying, oh, I don't want to read that kind of book, or I don't want to read that kind of book, give poetry a try, because I can guarantee you can find someone that will interest your child. I've had a person that was part of one of my memberships in the past. Her daughter was only into horses and she really didn't find much interest in poetry. Once she went to the library and found a book of all horse poetry, her daughter was so excited about it, she chose one to memorize. So don't discount poetry. Give it a try. Kate, the second thing, which was the first one I mentioned, that you definitely want to not do is to constantly pick at and point out what a bad reader your child is. Now, I can talk from major experience here. I think by the time I graduated high school, if I was lucky, I was maybe a third grade reading level. I was a painfully slow reader, did not do well at it. And even while in elementary school, I, for the most part, checked out Beatrix Potter books because they were short. And then again, those were a challenge. And I mostly got them because I loved the art in it. So if you are having a challenge, make sure you also are checking out books and stuff that have lots of great illustrations, because that will help your children be interested in reading. But bringing that all back to how poetry is going to help you, again, poems are in stanzas. Sometimes they're only 2 lines long. Sometimes they're 4 lines long. Sometimes they're 6 lines long. Sometimes one poem might have 1 stanza, which is the little teeny paragraphs. Sometimes they'll have 3 or 4 stanzas. So that is what's great about poetry, is that it lets your child feel successful really easily. They get little wins all the time. So full books can feel impossible when you are a slow reader. When I was even in high school, if the teacher said, hey, you need to come back tomorrow and have a chapter of a book read, I was giving up before she even finished the sentence, because for me, that was just an impossible feat. And when your children are still learning to read well, that is how it feels. Even if you say, hey, just read a page. If it's really challenging, they feel defeated before they've even started. They probably feel stupid. They probably feel like they're not making you proud of them. There's so many emotions that are involved in it, and it's nothing that you yourself are choosing to do, because we all love our kids. We want our children to feel successful. But when we harp on it and when we're constantly pointing things out, then they get these anxiety feelings and feelings of failure over something as wonderful as reading books. So make sure that you're using something simple and short. So for example, see here. I haven't even looked inside this book yet. Okay, here is a great little short poem right here. Okay, 1 square foot per person, please. Did you know that all the people in the world could stand shoulder to shoulder in a space the size of the Indonesian island of Bali? And if they did, how jolly. How simple is that, right? Most of those words are pretty simple, but being introduced to a new word like Bali or Indonesian, that's a really cool, those are some cool words that they can be introduced to, and they can feel like they've become smarter. They can be successful at reading the poem. And if you act over the moon proud of them, they're gonna wanna do it again. And so they're gonna look for more poems. So use poetry as a way to let your children feel like they're being successful, okay? Confidence comes with small wins, okay? I didn't teach my children how to read books a traditional way. We used Bob books, and if you've seen them, they start out with like 1 or 2 to 3 words per page. And if my children got 2 pages in and they were already feeling like spent and they're like, that's enough, that was fine. We just went back to where we left off the next time we started reading. Children will learn to read. They want to be like us. They want to grow up and be like the adults in their lives. So as long as they see you reading books and you're reading books aloud to them and reading poetry aloud to them, they are going to be drawn to it and they're going to want to do it just like you. Okay. So don't feel like you're failing. My children didn't even start touching reading till they're about 8. But by age 9, they were finally like really into like wanting to read, but still really short little bits here and there. And they went from Bob books to Harry Potter in a year because it's something they wanted by that point. And if they feel confident and they don't feel like they're failing you, they don't feel stupid, they don't feel like it's something that they want to avoid, then they'll go for it and they're not going to want to stop. Okay, so make sure you start out with those small successes, okay? It builds their confidence. It makes them feel good about themselves, and it makes them realize that they can learn something new, okay? Super duper important, okay? So this is why poetry feels safe, right? It's short and simple. They can learn some new big words, but without feeling overwhelming. They have stanzas rather than chapters. So rather than feeling like they don't succeed until they complete a full chapter, they can read 1 stanza, they can read 2 stanzas, they can even just read 2 lines a day from a poem. And as long as you are acting as if you are proud and excited for them, that's all that matters, okay? And then letting them decide when they are done at that time, okay? So some days they might do awesome and they'll do a whole stanza or 2 or 3, or maybe even read an entire poem. And then the next day, they might just not be in their groove and they might be done after about, a couple of lines because they're not having that great of a day, or maybe they're not feeling super confident, and that is fine. So I hope you take this to heart. Just because I was one of those kids, I wish people had approached reading way differently, because by the time that you have been drilled with flashcards on word sounds and drilled with sight words, and all you do is feel like you're constantly failing, it does nothing for your confidence, and it does not draw you into reading. So I hope that was a major help, and we'll talk to you soon.